Okay, well, we have a great group with us so far. I'm super excited to have everyone here. My name is Tamara Crabtree. I actually work for Oklahoma Family Network. I am here merely as a moderator, just to answer questions, see if we can help, read some questions, direct them to Joni, interrupt Joni as she's speaking if I need to. But yes, we would love to know where everyone's from. So if you get a chance, type in your name and your location into the chat box. That would be super fun for us to be able to see where everyone's located in the state. And you are attending the Helping Kids Manage Their Own Health with Joni Bruce as our speaker. And Joni Bruce is, she is my wonderful boss. And so I love working with Joni, and I know she's going to be able to tell us more about her experiences and why managing your healthcare helping your kids manage their healthcare is an important topic to her. So Joni, I think we've got a good group. Why don't we go ahead and get started?
Super. I know I love seeing the chat, but I'm going to close it real quick so I'm not distracted. That can be a little distracting. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so you all can see my slides. Okay. Well, I wish I could turn that ding off, but I can't. So welcome. Thanks for spending your lunchtime with us. It's really good to see all of your smiling faces. I wish so much we could have been in person, and I'm hoping, at least for the Joining Forces conference, maybe in March, we'll be able to all be together. That would be really nice. But in the meantime, thanks for spending your lunch hour with me. You know, helping our kids manage their own health, a lot of times families will say, oh, why do we need to do that? It just, I can do it. The problem is they grow up. And if we don't take opportunities daily when we have them and just share a little bit at a time with our kids, then when they do go off to college or they go to camp or they go stay with grandmother, they may not be able to manage their health care in the way that they may need to. And this is actually a photograph of my daughter. Ellen's our oldest. And when she was 2 years old, she was diagnosed with asthma, and she had a few other health conditions that kind of helped cause it, such as reflux. Sometimes that'll cause kids to have asthma, and she had reflux too. But, she's 3 years old here. She already learned how to do her own nebulizer treatment. Now, certainly, we were there and watching over her, but we would put her, for those of you that have older kids, or maybe when you were a child, you might have had a Barney doll and might have watched Barney as a dinosaur on television. So she had a little Barney chair and she'd sit in front of Barney's Imagination Island. I spent many nights with her doing her breathing treatments. It seemed like at night, that's when she'd always have a hard time. But it was really nice because Jay and I could just stay in there with her, but then she felt like she had some control over what was happening, to help make her body more well. And she even got to a point, just as she aged, that she would do her peak flow meter in the morning, and we had a chart that she could actually put stars on. Yes, I did it, and here's what the number was. That's something that we used so that then when we would go back to see her pulmonologist, he could see how she was breathing on a daily basis. So that was a good thing. So this is Miss Ellen when she was about 3. So she's a big girl now. Oh, gee. There we go. All right. So objectives for this session is we'll just talk about some ideas that you might be able to do with your kids along the way. I think I learn as much from other parents just hearing things that they've done that work really well with their child. And I'm hoping not only will I share with you some things that we have done with our kids to help them become more independent, but then I'm hoping that maybe you'll share ideas that you've done with your kids as well. And then for those of you that have a little bit older kids, are your kids ready to manage their own health? Are they doing as much as they can with the ability where they are today? Because even kids and young adults or adults who have developmental disabilities can learn to do certain aspects. They can sign themselves in at the doctor. Some of them can let you know that their app on their phone said that they need to pick up a new prescription and things like that. And then I'll share some practical tools to help you manage your kids' care, but then transitioning it to them. And then we're going to look at an organizing tool. And this is another session that we could do anytime. It's called Transition Care Notebook, and was actually developed out of a need that arose during a Joining Forces conference, which is our family professional partnerships conference that we host each year in March. It came up that it was really important for kids to have a notebook where they could put all their health and school information, but then that would also teach them how do you write a resume, how do you write a cover letter, how should I dress, and that sort of thing to help them get jobs. So that transition care notebook is something that we'll touch on today as well. And then we'll also give you access to where you can download all those documents and either use it yourself, or you can share those with your kids and they can do it as well. And all of these documents are great for adults too. So if you have health conditions, you should have your own health transition notebook or just a care notebook. So in order to help kids prepare for transition where they're managing more of their health care, they really have to learn to be more independent. And, it's kind of like when our kids are first born, it takes them a while, then they start to walk and then they start to talk. And so they become more independent. And some children can be more independent than others, but most people can do some aspect of their own healthcare, or they can do some aspect of managing their own healthcare. Even if all it is when they go to the doctor, they can sign in their own name if your doctor's office still has a sign-in sheet. And then another thing that's it feels a little traumatic at times. I know it did for us with our kids, although they transitioned nicely to adult-oriented medical care. Both of my kids transitioned from a pediatrician to a family practice doctor. And then our daughter actually transitioned to an OBGYN, that would help take care of her physical needs in that area. But we all just started seeing a family physician, and that worked really nicely. Once they got up, a little past puberty. My daughter stayed with the pediatrician longer than my son did, but we had a female pediatrician and he was like, you're not doing anything down in those other parts. So we needed to move him to a male doctor anyway when he got a little bit older. And then the other thing that's really important is that you just start thinking about, even while your kids are in grade school, my child may be in grade school or middle school now, but I need to start thinking about at some point, they're going to move from school to work or other aspects of life. And they need to be able, if they're going to have a job and they have asthma, they need to be able to think about what kind of job might not be good for me. Probably wouldn't want to work in a woodworker shop. Or if they have really bad sensitivities to outdoor pollen, they probably won't want to work, as a groundskeeper for a company that does yards and flower beds and that kind of thing. So it's important that we start thinking about that even as our children are younger, because we play a pretty big role in what our kids end up doing, further in life, because we give them opportunities that they can see all different types of employment. So then they can start thinking about what they would want to be. It was really interesting. Our son is a firefighter. And I remembered he was a firefighter as a Halloween costume a couple of times. He just had a dress up outfit like a fireman. And I thought, I think I'll have to look, because I buy my kids a Christmas ornament every year. And I said, I think some of and then I put them in a box and save them for them. For when they go off on their own, then they have a box of Christmas ornaments to get started with. And I went back and he actually had 3 ornaments that had something to do with firefighting. It was like 3 years old, 4 years old, and 5 years old, or 4, 5, and 6. I can't remember. And so it's really interesting that even that gave us a glimpse of what he would end up doing as an adult. I never had no thoughts of him ever being a firefighter, but he's up in the Pacific Northwest right now fighting those horrible forest fires. So we're really proud of him. So there are a number of websites that you may want to try out and see. God Transition is probably absolutely the best website for looking into from a health perspective as kids transition to adulthood. And they have some great videos that you might want to watch with your youth, especially once they maybe get up into middle school, but definitely high school. Kids should already be managing as much of their health as they possibly can. And then the Zorro Center has a number of things. There are transition workbooks that are available that are free. You can just download them. They're PDFs. And then the National Dissemination Center for Children with Disabilities has has a number of free items as well. You might know them by the name of Nietzsche. And we'll be sending out this PowerPoint later so that you'll have access to all of this information. So what happens at the age of 18? Well, a lot does. I told my kids and they were like, thanks, Mom. But I said, you know what? You can go to jail now. So don't be doing dumb stuff, because that's not a good thing, because it can make a really big difference in your life. But in addition to that, medical treatment without the parent's permission in youth goes away. It's the other way around. Once you turn 18, the youth needs to give the parent permission for the physician to speak with them. And I know that our pediatrician, Ellen, was still seeing the pediatrician, and it really was even earlier than 18. I think when she was about 12 or 13 years old, she would just say, Ellen, you come in first, and then I'll have your mom come in later if you want her to. And, so she did that to help Ellen learn that she needs to learn how to ask questions. And I remember one of her specialists, she wanted me to go in with her really almost the whole time that she saw her before she transitioned to an adult specialist. And if I was in there, she would just look at me. She wouldn't speak up. And so we just learned I would stay out in the waiting room, for the first part of the session. And then they would call me in when they were ready, if Ellen even wanted me to come in. So she certainly didn't have to have me in there. And I think the more you can do things like that, the better. And parents are no longer legally responsible. So if they sign a contract to get an apartment with their friends and they don't pay, it doesn't come back on mom and dad. So kids need to understand, once you turn 18, it's on you. So if you're going to do that, you need to make sure that you manage your money well. And the Transition Care Notebook has a number of things that will help your child start to learn those skills. They can also get married without our permission, once they turn 18. And certainly all of these things are, this is the case if the child is not under guardianship. If a child, youth, and if an adult is under guardianship, then of course, whoever the guardian is would carry the same responsibility and liability as a parent does before a child turns 18. So I felt like I needed to say that just in case. There are alternatives to guardianship. Medical and financial powers of attorney are two ways that you can still give your kids the ability to still vote and have a lot of their own responsibility, but you can support them if they need help in the area of medical and finances. And if you see the link here, the Oklahoma Bar Association has a wealth of information. I mean, if you need a will and you don't have one, or if you're a young adult or your child would like a will and you don't want to have to pay a lot of money, go on their website. I mean, there's information on trusts. There's information on special needs trusts. Now you can't do your own special needs trust. You need an attorney to help you with that. And certainly you have to have an attorney help you do a guardianship. But there's a lot of paperwork that you can do ahead of time that will save you money if you're needing to go through those sorts of procedures. This is one of the best tools that I've seen in a long time. And when I mentioned a little bit earlier, the website. Oh, I'm having a brain freeze here. Let me get my notes. The GOT transition website. This document actually has a front and a back. This is the front. And so this is a readiness assessment. And so the young adult or the youth, and I would do this with my kids in middle school, is when I started trying to see, where are they? Are they starting to learn skills? Like I mentioned earlier, with Ellen, we had her learn how to do her peak flow meter, and she knew, the meter had red, yellow, and green. And if she was in green, she knew everything was good, and she put a green star on her chart. And if it was yellow, she put a yellow star on her chart, and then she'd go, Mom, I'm yellow. So then we might need to do a different medication or go to a nebulizer instead of just an inhaler or the other medications that we gave. But it was really good. She was able to do that in grade school. And she even carried her inhaler. She had to be on a 504, but she even carried her inhaler in her backpack because it was important for her to have that. But some of the questions that this asks, it's things like, can I explain my health needs to others? Well, if I'm in the room with my daughter and she won't speak up and share with the doctor what her needs are, then I probably need to stay out in the waiting room while she's still under a pediatrician's care so that the pediatrician can kind of prompt her and coach her and teach her how to explain her health needs so that she could actually prompt her with questions. And then she would just say, Ellen, if why don't, these are the types of things that when you transition to an adult healthcare provider, you're going to need to be able to communicate with them. Asking questions when they don't understand what the doctor says. That's really important. Do they know their allergies? Do they know what medication they're on? Do they know their family history? I know my kids, when they go see their doctor, sometimes they'll call or text and say, hey, they're asking me if anybody in our family had colon cancer, or, and they don't always know. So it's good to make sure that our kids know their family history and just so that their physicians or providers will know what might be ahead. Do they know that when they turn 18, they have full privacy in their healthcare? And do they know what that means? It means you can't ask me as your mom to call the doctor and say, hey, I need to ask you something about Ellen's appointment, unless they've given consent. And most physicians will ask kids to sign that annually, like at the beginning of the year. I know one of my kids still has me on their portal so that so that I can make appointments for them if they're away, or if they need to pay their bill and they can't, their app isn't working or something like that. So they send them an email each year, and then they have to say, is it still okay that your portal is attached to your mom's? So you just kind of have to think about things like that. So what might help? Because certainly we do not want to need to have to go to our kids' appointments the rest of their lives. That's not even healthy, and our kids don't want it, and we don't want that for them. We've been working their whole lives for them to be more independent, first to learn how to feed themselves, then how to walk themselves, and then how to get to school on time by themselves. Just all along the way, we're teaching our kids things so that then as adults, they'll be able to wake themselves up with an alarm, get to work on time, figure out transportation that's reliable and things like that. So some of the things that my kids have done is set an alarm. My daughter was like the queen of alarms. She was amazing. She would have an alarm. Okay, you're gonna have to get up in 15 minutes. And then another one. Okay, now you have to get up. Okay, now you need to be downstairs eating. Now you need to be on your bicycle, riding to the college, because she lived at home one and a half of the years of college. And so she would ride her bike, and she knew if she did not leave by this time, she would be late. So that's one thing that kids can do, but there are a number of apps. And certainly if you live very rural, you may not have access to a Walgreens or a CVS, but there are also, like the iPhone has an app where you can put all of your health information in one place. And then you can set your, both Android and iPhones, where if you had an emergency, they would be able to get into that part of your phone so that they can actually see what we put on what's called a portable medical summary. And I'll show you that in just a minute. There are charts, just like a chore chart, but, we had that chart for Ellen on the back of her door for a long time where she could, or maybe it was on her bedside table, that was, she could mark that she'd done her peak flow meter and what the number was. So then that way, when we went to the pulmonologist, he could see her numbers. And start young. A 3-year-old, if you did their peak flow, you could have a poster on the back of their door and the date. And you could say, okay, you're green today, so you're going to put a green star on there, and then let them take responsibility for that. Even at 3 or 4 years old, they can put the star on the chart, or they can remind you, oh, mom, we haven't done my peak flow meter. So I know my daughter was very quick to learn to do those types of things, which is really important because we're not with our kids all the time. And if they have some kind of health condition that could be life-threatening, if they can't articulate to those that are trying to help them what they need, to be safe and healthy, then that really puts them at risk. Then there are accommodations that you can ask for while they're in school. One that I mentioned earlier that Ellen had was that she could have her inhaler in her backpack. I kind of had to work hard on that one. They said, "Oh no, everybody keeps them in the office." And I said, "Listen, by the time you got from her room, which was at the back of the building, to the office, she could already have died, if she had a really bad reaction." So it took a little bit, had to get a prescription from the physician with a letter that explained why it needed to be that way. And, we finally worked it out. We worked with the school and that worked okay. Some kids have to carry an inhaler or an EpiPen in their backpack or keep it, you certainly want to keep it safe so that other children can't get to it. But, those are life-threatening reasons that kids may sometimes need to have those on their person versus in the office. And then another accommodation can be taking medication. We had a scenario where actually at different times, both of our kids needed to go to the office to take medication. Sometimes they're on an antibiotic 3 times a day. And so, they might need to go into the office to get that. And sometimes you'll need to put that on a Section 504 accommodation. So staying healthy, things that kids need to know about. Do they need medication? And if they do, then they need to know what they need, why they need it, and when they need it. How to order it, that's pretty important. And even a person who doesn't use words to communicate can get an app on their phone and order their medications by phone. Or you can set it up where it auto renews. So then you just get a text that says your medication is ready, you can come and pick it up. At what age do you think we should start this? Well, I would think late middle school or early high school. Most kids could at least do certain things. But certainly that will be a decision that the guardians or the parents would want to make with the child. But I highly recommend apps because most young people have their phone with them all the time. And the apps will remind them to take their medication. They'll remind them when they need to refill medication, or some of them even will request, "Do you want to renew this prescription?" So if they forgot to take some and they still have some left, they can always say no and then order it a little bit later. So, but the other thing is really need to start thinking about how will my child pick up their medication when they aren't living with me or if I'm out of town. You might want to consider mail order or, just thinking through with the child if it's not someone that will ever drive. Maybe they have a significant seizure condition and so they're not able to drive, then you have to think about, okay, well, let's cluster your care. You have sooner ride. And so if you go to the doctor's office, let's just make sure we try to time your prescriptions so that they're due on the same time that you go to the doctor, so then they can stop at Walgreens or CVS or whatever pharmacy that you use, mom and pop pharmacy. And you could do that all in one trip instead of having to make multiple trips. And then you also have to think about how will they pay for it? Some youth and young adults have Sooner Care or Medicare and Sooner Care, but not all people do. They have Blue Cross and Blue Shield or Aetna or whatever insurance company, and they may have copays. So they may need to pay $10. Or I know at one time one of my kids was on something that had a copay of $125. So we had to really think about, if I'm not with them, how are they going to pay for that? Because that can get a little tricky, because again, our goal is for our kids to be able to be as independent as they possibly can. And then another thing, which we're kind of looking at our house, is so they have insurance now, but when they turn 26, what will they do? If they don't qualify for Sooner Care, then they'll be needing private insurance. And so they might want one job, but if that job doesn't provide healthcare insurance, then they may actually not be able to take that job, because helping them to understand how important it is to have insurance. A lot of young adults don't understand that. But if you can help them see how much you pay for a prescription, how much it costs to go see the doctor, how much would that prescription be? Go to the pharmacy sometimes when they're not busy and say, okay, my copay is $10. And so you ask them, well, if we didn't have insurance, how much would that cost? Oh, it would be $75 a month for that. And so then that's a learning opportunity for you, taking that teachable moment and sharing with your child, this is why it's important. This is why we have insurance, so that healthcare is affordable as you need it. And then also, people need to know how to take their medications. Some you need to take with food, some without food, some you need to take at night so that they work better. Some need to be taken in the morning. They may have some that can't be taken at the same time. Do they know how to fill a pill box? That's a really great way to help adults and children be able to manage their medications even, easier. And, when you're a busy mom, you've got a lot going on. I had to have a pill box for my kids, and then my husband had a pill box. Everybody had a pill box. And then that way you remember, do we take the vitamins? Do we do the inhaler? If you do it all at the same time, it kind of helps. So helping our kids think about, how will you get to the doctor, when you're grown up? How will you pay for that gas? Do you know about Sooner Ride? And just training them on, if they do have Sooner Care, they can utilize Sooner Ride. Certainly they can't do it before they're 18 by themselves, but even showing them, Sooner Ride has an app now, or you can go online once you've called in and gotten set up with Sooner Ride. Then you can either use their app, or you can go online and set it up and show them you need to set it up 2 or 3 days ahead, or they won't. It doesn't work. Do they know their dentist's name? Do they know their phone number? Do they know how often they need to go? Do they know that their dental insurance will cover twice a year seeing the dental hygienist have their teeth cleaned? Do they have a copy of their insurance card for their dental? Do they have one for their medical? We all need that. Every time you walk in the door, they want to see a copy of that. Do they know what they do if they needed a $1,000 root canal and a crown? We need to talk to our kids about that, because those are real life things that can happen. And if we talk to our kids as those types of things happen as they're growing up, and we just have a natural conversation with them, that can make that starts that process of them understanding how important healthcare is, how important it is that we stay healthy and see our providers on a regular basis. Do your kids know about preventive health checks? Once kids get past the age of not needing shots anymore, their vaccines, it's around 11 or 12 years old, that is when well child checks go way down. And that's not good, because oftentimes they'll catch health conditions when they go to a well child check that they might not have caught. And unfortunately, if you find out when it's too far down the road, it can make the treatment for some conditions a lot more difficult. Can they go in alone, or do you need to go with them? And, the sooner that they can go in on their own, at least for a few minutes, the better. Now, I wouldn't suggest that at 5 years old or 8 years old, but, once they get close to puberty, you might at least let them try going in by themselves. And they'll be very fearful at first. And what I did at first is I just said I would get in the office with them before I started transitioning, where I didn't go in with them the full time. And I would just say, okay, Ellen, or okay, Chris, Mom's going to be quiet and you're going to talk. So when the doctor asks questions, I'm zipping it. It's your turn to talk. And they hated it at the beginning. But then once they started saying, oh, I have control over this, I can tell them my knee hurts, because my mom might not tell them that. And there might be something going on, but I happen to forget. Do they know the type of health insurance they have and a copy of their card? I mentioned that a little earlier. Knowing about their copays. Do they know what it means to go out of network? Our son found out the hard way what that means. Do they know that it costs a lot more to see a doctor at the ER than if they see the doctor in the office during regular office hours? You can even see what I call a doc in the box, a quick care clinic, for a lot less than going to an emergency room. And our kids need to know those things. There's no reason that they should learn those by difficulty getting a big bill that they don't know how they're going to be able to pay. So I don't want you to panic. They don't have to know everything at once. My suggestion is you start where you are, and you just start building knowledge every day as just little life lesson opportunities come up. If they don't feel comfortable talking to you, they may have another trusted adult that they feel comfortable with. Maybe they have an older sibling, maybe they have an aunt or a grandparent. just helping them actually make the appointments. Just say, okay, it's time to see your pediatrician for your well child check. I'm going to let you call and I'll be with you. And you'll probably have to get on the phone if they're underage and just say, I'm trying to teach him how to make his own appointments so that when he gets older, he knows how to do that. And I talked about some of this. I know with our daughter, with one of her specialists, as soon as she started driving, I would have her drive and I would ride. And then that way she started learning how to get to the office and learned where to park and learned how to get in, and I would just say, I'm just following you today. You're the one that's going to lead, follow the leader. And that worked really well for our family. And then, like I mentioned earlier, I would sit out in the waiting room and let her go in on her own. And then if she even needed me, I would go in. If she didn't, I didn't. And then I'd just say, hey, how'd it go? It's important for them to see that we trust them with their own health care. This is an app that's on my iPhone, and you can actually input your information, and then you can give approval that in an emergency, they can actually go in and see all of this. And this was when I first got an iPhone, and I didn't even know it had this. I started filling it out. I probably need to fill it out the rest of the way. But this pretty much gives a lot of what a paramedic or an ER doctor would need, especially if they're not able to speak. Or I don't know about you, but sometimes when I'm under stress, I forget things. I forget, oh my gosh, they're on 3 medicines that start with an S and I don't remember what they are, and if you're not at your regular physician's office or at grandmother's house, or you're seeing, in a quick care clinic or in the ER, and all that just leaves your brain. Now in this day and time, a lot of the systems, healthcare electronic record systems talk back and forth, but not all of them do. So it can be really helpful if you have that on your phone, you can just pull it out. And I might just say, Heartland Regional Genetics Network is actually taking our care notebook right now and putting it into an app. And so as soon as that's available, we'll have that available on our website. So I'm not sure exactly how soon that'll happen, but they're working on it right now. I think within a year for sure it should be finished, and hopefully by next March it will be. So the transition care notebook I've mentioned a little earlier. All the documents can be found on our website. If you go to Oklahoma Family Network and then click on training, and you go about halfway down the page, it has all the transition care notebook documents. And again, it's everything that a child or an adult, we all need one of these, or at least the care notebook part. So you can put all of your health information in there, the names of providers and things like that. And then transition documents are more around employment. Except for the document, like I showed you earlier, that kind of helps test a child to help them see what skills am I missing that mom and dad might want to work on with me. So this is a list of the care notebook documents that we have available. And again, these are all available. They're in Word documents, so you can actually pull them up, type them, save them, and then if their medication changes, or if they have a new hospitalization and you need to change it, you can just keep changing it over and over again. Some people like to put it in an accordion file that they can carry in. Some put it in a notebook. Some scan it and put it on their phone. Whatever works best for you. And then pretty soon we'll have it available in an app, so it goes with you everywhere you want to go. So there's a number of documents in the care notebook. There's a seizure log. There's a log, for peak flow for a child that has asthma. There's a log for blood pressure. There's a log for glucose readings for someone who has diabetes. And they all pretty much look like this. We try to make them very simple. The Department of Rehabilitation Services actually looked at these and helped us make them so that they're easy to read, even if someone has low vision. But you can use this particular form to track your appointments. I remember going in one day and our child's pediatrician said, oh my goodness, your child hasn't grown at all in a whole 12 months. She was thinking, oh my goodness, are we going to have to see an endocrinologist or what? And I said, well, actually she has. The last time, because her pulmonologist actually weighed her and measured her every single time she went in, because some of the medications that she was on can stunt growth. And so I was actually able to pull out my appointment log because she asked me the last time we'd seen him. And so I pulled out my appointment log and then I said, I have better than that. I actually have her height and weight chart, and so I pulled that out. She went, oh, okay, we probably just mismeasured the year before. There's a daily medication tracking. There's also what medication you take and what dosages and when you started it and why you're on it and who prescribed it. And that can be really helpful if you've had to change physicians. There's a document for the list of your healthcare providers. There's a document that has all of your therapists. There's a document if you're in early intervention, the list of if your child has an occupational therapist, a physical therapist, a nurse that maybe comes. So there's a place for all of their names and phone numbers, fax number. So then that way, if you actually moved, you would know those names if you needed to get in contact with them to communicate with maybe new providers. This is the portable medical summary. I mentioned this earlier. All of us should have this. So if you don't do anything else from this session, I hope all of you will go on our website and download this Word document and type it up for everyone in your family. Because you know how it is. You get to an emergency room or you see a doctor you've never seen before, and you're like, oh my gosh, did my child have their gallbladder out in 1999 or was it 2000? And you're trying to remember all of that. It gets hard. Dosages of medications change all the time. So it's hard to keep up with that. So again, this is in a Word document and you can just fill it out and save it over and over again. If you fold it lengthwise and then fan fold it, it'll fit right in most wallets. And so that works really nicely. I know I've always encouraged people, your child should have one of these in their backpack, especially if they have high medical needs, so that no matter where they are, whoever is with them will know that all of their health information is in, or the critical parts of their health information are right there in their backpack. The transition module has a lot of documents. A team from the Department of Rehabilitation Services and the Developmental Disabilities Council, a number of teachers, a number of transition teachers and counselors, a number of family members were involved with developing the transition module. So it's everything from how to write a resume to a scholarship essay. So they can see what one looks like if they've never seen one before. So then if they have an opportunity to write for an essay, they see one that's been done that was successful. There's a letter of resignation. There's how to dress for an interview, what to wear, what not to wear for both men and young women. So just a lot of neat things. And this transition module can actually be used for any adult or even a youth that's trying to get a job after they turn 16 because they want to make a little money. There's a transition priority checklist. So let's just look at that for a minute. For age 14 and 15, learn more about your disability or health need, including your strengths and accommodation needs, including assistive technology. So they're recommending they should start knowing that by 14 or 15. Most kids are a freshman in high school, and that's really when all of this transition planning really ought to be kicked into gear and doing some of the harder things. Even some of the things that we talked about today. So at 16, do they know how to participate in transition planning in their IEP meeting? Do they know how to speak up? Do they know how to share their desires? At 18 to 22, they may open a checking account. My kids opened one well before that. And we taught them how to, they had a little passbook savings account and they had a little book. And so every time if they got $25 for their birthday from their grandmother and they put, 20 of it in savings and then they got to spend 5, they had their little book so they could keep up with that. Those are really important skills so that as they become adults, they're able to manage all of that. And now there's so much that you can do with apps on their phone. You can show them how to deposit checks on their phone, how to check their balance. You basically can balance your checkbook looking on your phone. It's really helpful. So what can your child do right now? So I've mentioned a little earlier using a chart with stars to help them to remember either to take their medication or ask, am I supposed to take my medication? Or you might use it if they're tracking something, if you have a seizure chart or a peak flow chart, or if the child has diabetes, what their blood sugar was, or if they have heart condition, if they need their blood pressure checked every day. They can start pretty young just by incentivizing them by giving them a sticker. I was amazed what my kids would do just if they, if you gave them a sticker for something. Can they make their own doctor's appointment? At what point is it okay to do that? Most pediatricians, once a child is 16, will allow them to make their own appointment. Now, they may want to talk to mom and dad after the appointment, like get them on the phone or FaceTime or something like that. But that can be really helpful. Can they sign in at their appointments? Most kids by age, 6 or so could actually walk up to the front and sign their name. That helps them build confidence in, again, managing their care. Do they know how to call 911 when it's appropriate? It's really important that our children know that. Because it might be them, we've all seen on TV where kids saved their parents because they were able to dial 911. Can they fill their medication box alone? At what point would you feel comfortable doing that? We would pull the bottles out and the little pill boxes, and we'd just sit at the kitchen table, and I would help. At first, I would help them do it, and then later they would do it themselves when they got a little older. Can they take their medication on their own? And at what point do you feel like it's safe to do that? So you kind of have to watch them. You might end up with a bunch of pills in a drawer like I did. So, because kids will go through periods of time that they don't want to take their medicine. So, and I get that. It gets kind of old. So for more information, you can check our website, and it's just oklahomafamilynetwork.org. And it's kind of divided up by emotional support. So there's all kinds of information. If you'd like to get connected with another parent for parent-to-parent support, or attend a support group or a private Facebook group. And then information and training is on another section. And that's where you can learn about like the transition care notebook or the care notebook. We have a lot of information, different resources on there, and then advocacy and leadership. And so if you're interested in days at the Capitol or the Joining Forces Conference, or we have a number of trainings available for people as they're journeying on in their leadership role as a family leader or a youth leader. Ask your child's physicians, pharmacists, and other providers how you can engage them more at the level that they're able. So try to go to the pharmacy when it's quiet and just say, how do you think I can help Johnny or Susie start doing more of their own care? What do you feel comfortable with? What do you think they can do so that they can start learning how to do this? And what we found with our kids is their physicians, the pharmacists, they were all really glad that we started doing that. They wish that more families would do that. So then when their child was 18 and went off and lived in another town or went to college, they didn't, they would know how to manage all of that, because it's important, because they'll be 18 before you know it. Okay, so that's the end of my slideshow. That was kind of quick and dirty. And we have about 14 minutes left. Do any of you have any questions, or is there anyone that has an idea that maybe I didn't share that you've done with your kids that helped them to be a little bit more independent than what maybe they could have been? Any thoughts about that, ideas or questions? Oh, good. Thank you, Jennifer. She mentioned in the chat that some medications require a doctor's approval. If deaf, hard of hearing, or communication issues, there's the option of TTY or using patient portals to message the doctor. Thank you for mentioning that. I meant to mention that on one of my slides. I think those patient portals are the best thing ever. A lot of them, you can make an appointment there. So even if a person doesn't use words, you can actually go online and show them how to set up an appointment with their provider. You can do the same thing with the pharmacy. You can reorder medications online. So that can be all of the new tools that we have available can really make a difference.
Joni, you've got another one in the chat that says, how do you help the kids feel open to talk to the doctors?
I think that takes coaching, and some of it is after you see a physician, maybe before you start transitioning them to play a bigger role, when you get out of the doctor's office, go get a Coke with them and say, let's talk about what just happened. That's pretty much how I started it with my kids. How did that feel? Do you think you could have asked Dr. Aston these questions instead of me? Or could you have answered the questions instead of me? Especially when they get to that freeze up time, when they get about 9 or 10 years old, they get kind of quiet and they don't want to, they just look at you and they don't want to answer. I think a lot of that is just talking with them about it and preparing them for it. So just like you do anything else, it's like, okay, here's what you can, you're driving to the doctor's office. Here's what you're going to expect. And of course, am I going to get a shot? Usually that was one of the first things my kids would ask. And, I had to prepare them, if they're going to get a shot, just go ahead and have your ringtail tutor in the car now and get it over with, because it's going to happen if I have to drag you in there. But, I think just talking with them, preparing them, it's very much like, I don't know if any of you have kids with learning disabilities, but one of the things that we learned is if we would pre-teach, so if I would read the part of the chapter in history the day before the child would actually hear it in class or hear the lecture, then they were a lot more apt to catch that information. It's the same thing with helping a child manage their health care. If you talk about it before it's going to happen, and then you kind of do what we would call a debrief, that's good. And Jennifer said pep talks are good too, and they absolutely are. If they do well, or maybe the doctor has you come in at the end and they just say, oh my goodness, how'd she do? Oh, she asked good questions and she answered well and all of that. And okay, so maybe we get to go to the dollar store and get a trinket, when they're younger, but maybe, we'll go to Sonic and get an icy or whatever. But I think just rewarding them, can make a big difference. Do
you want to touch on someone came in late and wants to know the care folders, how they can get one? So do you just want to touch on that again for everybody to hear?
I'm glad to. A couple of different ways. You can call our office, and Megan or
Tamara froze, so I'm kind of jumping in and taking over.
To pop in the chat and put our office number. It's 405-271-5072. So it's 405-271-50. Here, I bet I can do it.
I was going to say, now mine is frozen and not popping up. Okay.
So you can call this. Yeah, that's our office number, and you can call there and we'll send you, like we would have you look at the documents online. So if you go to oklahomafamilynetwork.org, and it's actually in this presentation. So when you get it, you'll see it. You can just click on that live link and it'll take you right to where the care notebook and transition care notebook documents are. But you can call our office and say, I need these documents, and we'll mail it to you. And if you even need a notebook, we can send a notebook as well, or we can do a porch drop. If you live near one of our staff, we have staff across the state. So if you live near one of our staff, they might even do a porch drop off and just put it on your porch. Oh, Maggie says that she lives on her own and sometimes she forgets what to do and what should I do if I forget and I don't have my mom with me. Okay, this is part of that planning, Maggie. What I would suggest is before you go to the doctor's office, maybe you've talked to your mom or your roommate or someone else, and as you think of things that you need to ask your doctor or that you have concerns about, just get a little notepad or a spiral notebook. If you have your care notebook, we actually have pages in the care notebook that you can actually go in and take your notes right there. And that can be really helpful. I think anytime you plan ahead, instead of just jump in there and go see the doctor without thinking, I've even, my parents even do this. They have a list of everything they're going to ask their doctor when they get in there. That's a sign of leadership, of being a leader of your own healthcare, just taking notes so that you don't forget before you go to the doctor's appointment.
The Notes app on the iPhone is a great way to just jot stuff down as well. I do that for my daughter and then just pull up the notes on my iPhone so I have it right there in my hand whenever we go to the doctor.
That's a great idea too. Some of us are more tactile or visual and we need, that paper, and others can just whip out their phone and it works great. Both of those are good ways to do that. Let's see. Oh, I have one that talks about everything but what they should in an appointment. I think again, for that, just plan ahead, and even as you're walking up, you got to get in the elevator or walk in or whatever. Okay, what are we going to talk to the doctor about today? I mean, clearly you want to do it in privacy. You don't want 15 people on the elevator and your child's sharing their health information in the middle of it. But, if you have a quiet space, and then when you get in there, just look at the child and say, didn't you tell me something about your knee? Or didn't you tell me about something that happened at school? So instead of you telling their story, have them tell their story and you're just prompting them. Anything else? Here's the thing. You can't do it wrong. You can't, as long as you start by helping your kids, you can't do it wrong. And it just occurred to me, I think in one of those blips, I missed a slide, and I think this would be really helpful. Let me go back. Here it is. I think somehow I skipped this slide. I know I did. Okay, can you see that, Megan?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, very good. All right, this is some of the whoops.
Well, no, I can't.
Yeah, me either. I'm not sure what happened there. Let me go back to the right slide. I wonder why
That's not coming up.
Yeah, for some reason that slide, can you see it now?
We can see it. Yeah, if you just leave it down like that, we can see it. Okay.
Let me do this. So these are our life course tools, and I'm watching the time, so I won't let you guys out late. I promise. Okay. We have 6 minutes. So this is what we call the trajectory worksheet, and we can send you these worksheets as well. We have some great tools. If you didn't get to watch Wanda Felty and Heather Pike's session on life course tools, we'll have all of these available. Well, most of the sessions are being recorded. So then we will upload them to our website, and then we'll send you guys a link as soon as they're all edited and ready to go. We'll have the PowerPoint and then the recording of each of these sessions, so you can go back and look at them. But I really encourage you to watch Wanda Felty and Heather Pike's life course tools session, and this is what it's from. But this trajectory worksheet, you can see down at the bottom where there's the little baby in the little light blue, and then these are like grade school children, maybe middle school, young adult, family age, and then aging. And what you do is you just start where you are. So let's say that you have a 7th grader. So you would be about where that purple, the darker purple dot is down at the bottom there. And you just start right there. And up here it says vision for the life I want. I want to be healthy. I want a nice home. I want a car someday. I want to be a veterinarian. All those wants, all those life wants that our kids want. You put those here. And then down here, what you don't want. I don't want to be sick all the time. I don't want to have a deadbeat job. I don't want to live very far from my parents. I want to live close to my family because family is important to me. And so you can have them fill out, what is it that you really want? And what is it that you don't want? And initially, the parents can do this on behalf of their child. What do I want for my child? What do I not want for my child? And you start at the age where they are right now, and then you start giving them opportunities so that they're on what we call a trajectory. See that arrow? For a good life, the life I want. And using that tool can be huge, because then you think about, what is it that I can do when they're 6 to make sure that they can get a good job? Okay, they need to learn to read. So we need to work on their spelling. We need to work on our, all of those Dolch word lists so that they memorize all those words that they'll see in books on a regular basis. What are the things that we can do as middle schoolers? You might want to take your child to work with you so they can see what your occupation is like. So it gives them a vision for what they might want to do. When our daughter was in 8th grade, she really thought she wanted to be a veterinarian. So we took her up to OSU, and they gave her a private tour in the veterinary school, and she got to see firsthand what that was like. And then they talked to her about, here, you're in 8th grade. Next where the grades count, right? Because in high school, you've got to get the right grades in order to be able to get into veterinary school. So they just said, here's the grades you need when you get out of college. And if you usually about have a 0.5 point grade point lower than you do in high school, then your high school GPA needs to be this. And so they really helped her think through, this is what I need to do. Here's the classes I need to take in high school so that then if I decide I want to be a veterinarian, I'm going to do that. But then they said, but you know what? If you decide that science isn't your gig or math isn't your gig, and you've got to be really strong in those areas to be a veterinarian, here's some alternatives. Actually told us about a book. Here's alternatives that you could do where you could work with animals, and it might even be a volunteer position. You may have a totally different job, but then maybe you foster dogs, until they can find a home or something like that. So that was really helpful for her. Ultimately, she decided her freshman year that she wanted to be a theater teacher versus being a veterinarian, because she got exposed to the theater and saw how much she loved it and how much it meant to her to have a theater coach that made a big difference.
I put the evaluation in the chat if you want to tell them about that as well.
So we have one evaluation to make it simple for the whole conference. And if you registered early enough, you may have gotten a box. And there's actually a QR code. If you act like you're going to take a picture of the QR code, it'll take you right to the survey. Or if you click on this link, it'll take you to the survey. If you're not going to watch any other of the sessions, go ahead and do that survey now. If you're going to watch more and you want to wait, that's okay too. We just need for you to do it one time. But we really do look at those surveys. In fact, this entire conference was planned from a survey. You guys answered questions last spring that we sent out of what types of sessions you would want if we did a family conference. And so every session that we're having, we had on Tuesday and then again today, actually came from the list of sessions that you asked for. So I hope you'll be sure and do the evaluation sometime. We still have 2 sessions. This one's going to wrap up now, and then we have one at 1:30. So you have 4 to choose from. And then tonight, I'm really excited. Mike Vinny is our keynote, and he is an awesome speaker, and he's going to be talking about managing during difficult times, because right now is a difficult time for a lot of people for a lot of different reasons. But just having COVID and having to go to conferences on Zoom versus getting to actually see people and hug them and see how they're doing and hear how their kids are doing, it's kind of hard. So I hope you'll look at your agenda and see where you want to go next. And all of the sessions today are being translated into Spanish. So for those of you that prefer Spanish interpretation.